Horrifying Moments. How Russia lost over 1,000 troops and 32 APVs in one day in Ukraine. A rebel Russian unit successfully attacked Russian troops close to the fiercely contested Donetsk town of Avdiivka, where Moscow has focused its efforts in recent months. New footage appears to show. Grainy footage circulating online appears to show several stages of an operation by the anti-Kremlin Russian Volunteer Corps in Donetsk, including the movements of military vehicles and a series of explosions around a network of trenches. Some of the clips look to have been filmed by the rebel fighters in eastern Ukraine, with others captured by airborne drones. The volunteers stormed enemy positions around Avdiivka and then transferred the position to the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. A concluding statement reads, "The Russian Volunteer Corps, a far-right group started up after the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine in early 2022, is made up of Russian fighters who have been fighting for Kyiv against Moscow." They have taken responsibility for cross-border incursions on Russian territory and say they have been active in Ukraine's Chernihiv, Kyiv, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Donetsk regions, as well as Russia's border regions, Bryansk and Belgorod. The Corps is also thought to have absorbed fighters from the mercenary Wagner Group, which had played a prominent role in the Kremlin's operations in Ukraine before the group's aborted rebellion in June and the death of its founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin. It is also believed to include fighters previously enlisted into Russia's penal military units, known as Storm Z. Russian forces in Ukraine have lost nearly 1,300 troops and 32 armored personnel vehicles, APVs, in the past 24 hours, as the country's troops advance near the eastern Donetsk town of Avdiivka. Moscow has lost a total of 330,140 fighters since Russian President Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, and 1,280 military personnel died in the past 24 hours. This is according to figures released by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Friday. British defense officials have said that Moscow's heavy losses have largely been caused by Russia's offensive against Avdiivka. Estimates of casualty figures vary, with Kyiv's figures usually exceeding those of Western countries. Russia has also lost a total of 10,472 APVs, 5,564 tanks, and 7,131 artillery systems in the ongoing war, the Ukrainian military's update said. Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of the NATO military alliance, said on Wednesday that Russia's military has lost a substantial part of its conventional forces, hundreds of aircraft, thousands of tanks, and more than 300,000 casualties. James Heappey, the UK's Armed Forces Minister, told Britain's lawmakers in November that British officials believed around 302,000 Russian troops had been killed or wounded since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. A joint investigation by the BBC's Russian service and independent Russian news outlet Mediazona on November 17th identified the names of 37,052 Russian military personnel who have died in the war in Ukraine. It said that the actual number of losses was higher than the figures stated in the investigation. Russia itself rarely releases figures on troop losses. In September 2022, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said 5,937 of Moscow's troops had been killed in the war. Kyiv similarly does not release updated death tolls. In April, a leaked U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency assessment said that Kyiv had suffered a 120,500 to 131,000 casualties, including 15,500 to 17,500 dead. The update comes as Russian troops are reported to be pushing forward to Avdiivka, where losses on both sides are believed to be high. The Institute for the Study of War, an independent U.S.-based think tank, said in its latest analysis of the conflict in Ukraine on Thursday that Russian forces continued offensive operations in the Avdiivka direction on November 29th and reportedly advanced northwest of the settlement. Russian millbloggers claimed that Russian forces advanced between 300 and 500 meters, 985 and 1,640 feet, in the direction of Novokalinov, 10 kilometers 6.2 miles, northwest of Avdiivka, and near Stepov, 7 kilometers 4.3 miles, northwest of Avdiivka, although ISW has not yet observed visual evidence of Russian advances in either of these areas, the think tank said. The British Defence Ministry said in an intelligence update on November 27 that the last 6 weeks have likely seen some of the highest Russian casualty rates of the war so far. Throughout November 2023, Russian casualties, as reported by the Ukrainian General Staff, are running at a daily average of 931 per day, British defense officials said, noting that the heavy losses have largely been caused by Russia's offensive against Avdiivka.
Вот, ехали с Бахмута по пути, прям вот перед нами уебала машину.